Boker Tov, I'd like to dedicate this Dvar Torah to a very good friend of mine, the late Barry Trink Ben Sion Ben Tzvi, who tragically passed away like a day ago. Those of you, the South African audience, who maybe knew Barry Trink, a wonderful person, I'd like to makdish his Zecher Tzadik Livracha. The funeral is going to be today. I'd like to makdish this video Le'ilui Nishmato HaTorah. It's actually very pertinent to the Dvar Torah, the content of what we're reading here in Parshat Shemini. In Parshat Shemini, we learn about the tragic deaths of Aaron's two children, Nadav and Abihu, and that they died Dafka at the most happiest time of basically of Aaron's life, the time of the dedication of the Beit HaMikdash, the Mishkan, and in the throes, in the very midst of the celebration, so they brought a korban which shouldn't have. That's something to go into in another time. And fire went out from Hashem, and they were consumed. They died. Now the Torah says that even though this tragedy happened in the Mishkan, things had to proceed as usual, and Aaron and his two surviving sons weren't allowed to mourn, and only the rest of Am Yisrael, it says that they had to mourn. The Torah says in Parshat Shemini, it says, "V'acheichem kol Beit Yisrael yivku et hasreifa asher tzaraf Hashem." You, Bnei Aaron, and your two children, you're not allowed to mourn, but your brethren, the entire household of Israel, they should cry for the sreifa, for the burning, asher tzaraf Hashem, which Hashem has burned. I'd like to give an explanation over here on the basis of something that I heard from the Rosh Yeshiva or it's written also, the late Rosh Yeshiva of Mir, Rav Nachum Parchovitz, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. In the Torah, there are many cases in which people passed away, and the Torah describes that there was laws of mourning. For example, when Yaakov passed away, so it says that the Torah describes very vividly the whole rite of the funeral, and how long it took, and how they embalmed him, and they went to Eretz Yisrael to bury him, etc. At the end of the Torah, when it says that Aaron and Moshe died, it says that the Jewish people, they cried and they mourned for Aaron and Moshe for 30 days. But in all these cases where the Torah speaks about mourning, the Torah describes how the Jewish people mourned, but the Torah doesn't give an instruction that we have to mourn. There's only one place that the Torah gives an instruction that the Jewish people had to mourn, and that is in this place, in the place of the passing away of Nadav and Abihu. And what's the reason? Rav Nachum said, he explained like this. He said, when a person passes away, as tragic as it is and as painful as it is, but basically that's the way of the world. Hashem already told us that we're not going to be here forever. And therefore, basically, as much as it's painful, but we know that that's how it is. But when it comes, when there's a type of death which is so absurd, so irrational, here at the greatest time of joy, in the middle of the Beit HaMikdash, two great people, it wasn't delayed at all, that they were struck down by some sort of heavenly fire. So this absurdity, this irrationality, this is just so not understood. Here the Torah instructs a person that one has to mourn. And the greater the absurdity, the greater the irrationality, sometimes with young children, chas v'chalila, or like in these circumstances, here the Torah says that there's an obligation to mourn. Now usually Parshat Shemini, it always falls more or less at the time before Yom HaZikaron, the time of Yom HaShoah. And I'd like to say that that's in our culture, we call the tragedy of the Holocaust, we call it a Shoah. But there's actually another word which typifies something which is tragic. And it's not the word Shoah. The Torah or the Nevi'im, when they want to speak about the calamity of Tisha B'Av, what word do they use? What's the ultimate tragedy? They use the word Eicha. Eicha means how could it be? When something happens and it's so irrational, it's so absurd, it so defies any logic, that we define that calamity as Eicha. How could it be? The only thing that we can do is to ask a question about it. How could such a thing happen? And that's what happened over here with Bnei Aaron. And that's why the Torah says in this case, the whole entire household of Israel is an instruction, is a mitzvah, is a command that we have to mourn for them because of the absurdity and the tragic nature of their passing away. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should always, that we should never, Chalila, know of such a things. But this tragedy then is when we've got an instruction to learn, to mourn. And I'd like to just conclude with something very connected to that, and that is that when things of such a irrational nature happens, like we say in the case of Tisha B'Av, like in the Holocaust, where all we can do is ask a question, Eicha, so that's when we actually realize that as much as we don't understand, that's dafka, where it's an indication that it comes from Hashem. Rabbi Mental always used to say that he saw God in the Holocaust. How could it be that he said, what he wanted to say was that he saw things that were so against nature, that they were so irrational, that there's no way that it could have been done through nature, but it was, as much as we don't understand it, we can't speak about these things. This is the hand of Hashem. And this is what it's saying over here. We saw that there was a death in the middle of the joyous erection of the Mishkan. If that could happen, and two children cut down, that's so irrational, that's so tragic, it no doubt comes from Hashem, and that's when there's an obligation for the entire Jewish people to mourn.